Hi there, and welcome to the second lesson of the Cinema 4D course. So, after giving you a brief overview of what the program is all about, in this lesson we're going to take a look at some of the many options and tools the program has to offer. As I said previously, it's a very extensive program, but don't worry, this introduction won't be too heavy. I'll try to make it as manageable as possible. Okay, so what you see here is the program's interface. It's in English. As I mentioned, the program is available in various languages. So if you're able to, you can change it into your own language. If English isn't your first language, it's always good to start off with English in these programs, as it will be easier for you to find more information, watch tutorials. Most of these resources are available online in English, at least the most important ones anyway. So I do suggest that, although you could use your own language, start off from scratch with English. But anyway, to change the language in case you did want to, all you have to do is go to Edit. And here in Edit, you have the Preferences option. And on this panel, as you see, you have lots of different options. So here in Interface, you have the language. So I have Spanish and English installed. So if I wanted to change the language to Spanish, I'll select it and then I'll get a window telling me to shut down the program, to update it with the change that we just made. So we would close the program, open it up again, and then it would be in Spanish, or whichever language we chose. So remember, if you click on it, you'll get that window and you'll have to refresh the program. So for now, I'll leave the program in English. So you know how to change the language, so let's take a closer look at the interface of the program. Cinema 4D, like most 3D software, has an interface and it has a viewport, like this one here. And here we'll be able to see all the elements that we create. So, we've got this viewport here. In other 3D programs, you might have seen that you can use different views. So you can see the object from various views: perspective, top, right, front. This is important because you need to model from different angles. So to do this, click on this icon here. And now you can see the views in these 4 windows. So you can work inside each window. For example, in the top view, you click here. And then we can work in this view. And to go back, just click on the icon again. Now we have this area over here. Okay, so it's easy to understand. You could say that this was like the layers in Photoshop. Although they're not layers, this is a panel where if you create an element, so let's say we make a cube, for example, then as you see, the cube appears on this panel. So here we'll be able to see all the elements we have in our project. On the panel beneath, we can see the properties of each of the elements that we create. So we can see the specific functions of those elements right here. So we have the viewport, the layer panel, so to speak, although I'll stress that they aren't actually layers. But look, for example, let's add a light. Now, see, we have the light and the cube here, but if I place the light underneath, then nothing changes whatsoever. So it's not like the layers. This is just a place where we can see all the elements that we create. And then inside each element, you can see the properties in the panel below, the specific options for that element. So here you've got the options for the light, but then if we go to the cube, then obviously they're different. Up here, we have some very important options like undo, which we can use if we've made a mistake. So that's basically Control Z that you're used to. And then Control Y, which would be to redo. Okay, let's see these options here. So this guide here is used for making the objects bigger or smaller. This is the selection tool. So with this, you can move the element like this. This one is the scale tool. So as you see, depending on where you click or where you adjust it from, you can achieve one effect or the other. So from these points, we can scale differently depending on the axis. And the y-axis, the x-axis, and the z-axis. And with this tool, you can rotate the element in any direction. See how if I don't move it from any of these points, then I can more or less move it however I like. But if I do it from here, then it only moves on that axis. There's another thing that I'd like to explain. Okay, I'll just go back. Okay, if I rotate this while holding Shift, okay, I hold it down, then see what happens. It only rotates by 10 degrees, well, 10 at a time. So I could go to the top view and holding down Shift. And this way I can rotate the object much more precisely. So if I don't hold down the button, then it's like this. And the other rotates 10 degrees at a time. If you click here, it shows you the last tools that you used. You can detach any panel or tab too. So I can take this over here, and I have all my recent tools to hand. So it's easier than to grab the tools. These are the axis. So right now they're active. It's always important to make sure they are activated. I don't really need to go into much detail here as you're not going to really use this very much. This here is to see our image. So if we select it, then we can see our first render. In this case, we've got the light and the cube. So this is what our image would look like. This one here does the same. But as you can see, it gives us more options that we'll see a little bit later. And here's where we can edit the render settings. So where we can save it, configure the format. But again, we'll see this a little bit later on. So we've explained this panel here and these ones. And now this one contains some very important elements too. And there's quite a few things to see here. Okay, let's just get rid of this and the light too. Okay, so the first one here contains the primitive objects. These objects are ready-made 3D elements. We usually use a primitive as a base to then make our model. They're also the most basic shapes, as the name indicates. They're the first basic shapes. So we've got a cube, a cone, cylinder, sphere, polygon, plane, a disc. So there are quite a few, but we usually begin modeling starting from a cube, a cone, a sphere, the most basic ones. Okay, here we have the splines. They have many different functions. You can use them to model, but we'll take a closer look a little bit later on. But just so you understand, you could say that a spline works kind of like a vector in Illustrator. So this pen, for example, allows us to do things like this. as we would do in Illustrator when creating a vector, although this isn't a vector. Then when we have a shape, we can model this. Again, we'll take another look at this later, but essentially that's what it does. We also have different types of splines here. So we've got the pen, as we just saw. Then there are some that are ready-made. So we even have one for text here. Okay, these are the modifiers, and they're quite important. And what these do is make modifications to any element that we're working on in various different ways. But again, we'll go more into detail about this a little bit further on. We've got some important tools here too, like symmetry or the bool. The bool allows us to join two objects and create shapes between them, or out of the empty spaces between them. So for example, let's put a sphere here. So here we have the sphere like this. And let's say we want to generate the space between the two objects. So the part of the sphere that's inside the cube, we want to generate an empty space with that shape. So we would use a bool to do that. With instance, we can clone elements. Metaball is another tool to join different objects in a kind of liquid form. Array is also used for cloning. So as you've seen in these two panels here, there are lots of options which I'll go into more detail a bit later on. What I'm doing now is just a brief introduction so you know your way around the interface. These are the deformers. These tools, as their name indicates, allow you to deform objects with different characteristics. They also apply effects like explosions or reducing polygons too. Lots of different options that, again, we'll see later on. Here we have the option to add a floor, a sky, or a background. These are the cameras. There are different types, as you see. It's quite an extensive area, so we'll always use a simple camera. Although later on we could explain what each camera does, just so that you get the idea. And the last icon on this bar is the lights. So we have the most basic lights, the Omni ones. We've got lights that simulate the sun, for example. Area lights for more advanced images. We've got spotlights. We could also add what's known as a null object, and we can have a light that targets that null object when we're creating an animation, for instance. On top of all these icons we've seen, we have another panel. And this contains more options and tools, although some of them are quite similar. Like the render one here. So we've got sculpt, motion tracker to track the cameras, MoGraph, which we mentioned when we talked about the modules. We've got the mocker, or character rigging. So here there are very specific options that we won't see on this course, but they're used for character animation. Here is the plugins tab. So I have a couple installed, like V-Ray and Substance. And this is where you'll see the integration of Cinema 4D with other software. So when you install a plugin to export something from Cinema 4D to Photoshop, for example, then this is where you'll find it installed. You have more options here in Window. This is the timeline, and you'll see this when you're animating something. This is more or less the same. So here in Create, you can also find the splines. There are a few buttons here that include the things that we've already seen, like Select. So here you've got the different tools. Okay. Here on the left, we've got a few important icons as well. Here we can select the objects. We can select parts of the texture. We'll explain later on what each icon is for, but this is the one that we'll use the most, this one here as well. This icon lets us make an object editable. So what does that mean? Any object we make has a kind of a grid or mesh, and we'll explain that more in the next lesson. But this option is very important because it allows us to edit the 3D object itself. Which, like I said, each object has a mesh. But let me just explain this here quickly first. This is for the cameras, the same as we saw before. Okay, so there are specific cameras like isometric, but we'll go to perspective. Okay, so going back to the mesh, in display you have this option here, which if you click on it, you can see the mesh on the object. So the vertices and the edges that each object has. And we can select these elements with these icons here. So we can select the vertices, the edges, the polygons. If I select the sphere, and then I make the object editable, with the vertices selected or the points selected, I can take the selection tool and I could select each point. I can select the edges, I can select the polygons, and that's how you could start modeling an object. Okay, here you can find more options, but usually for more advanced actions. Like, for example, if I wanted this vertex, this point here, to move to this part of the grid, well, I could use one of these options to make this move right here to this area on the grid. Or to one of the squares on the grid, instead of just being free like it is now. But like I said, these are more advanced options that we won't explore right now. Here at the bottom is the materials panel. So if I create a material, let's say I want to add one to this sphere, I'll go to create, new material, and it's quite easy. Just take this material and drag it here. So now the sphere is white. Okay, so this is the material panel. Then inside each material, as you can see, we get this other panel here, and this is the property panel that you get for each material. So you have the specific options for the material that you're working on. This panel down here is for the position. It's basically the same as if I click here and move it like this. And you see here how the position has moved on the x-axis. Okay, you've got the size, you've got the rotation. This is the timeline. We're not going to animate anything right now, so I don't want to go into too much detail so you don't get confused. But basically, if I hit play, then the timeline advances, as you can see. But obviously, as there isn't anything that's animated, nothing moves. If you wanted to add time, so to make it longer, then here you could change this from 90 frames to 300 frames. Press enter. And now you can move this line here and you can see the 300 frames. Okay, these options here are related to creating keyframes. Okay, another important thing to explain to you is this up here, which is the layout. So what I've explained up to now is the interface of the program, and this is in the standard model or layout. When you get to know the program better, then you'll see that Cinema 4D includes specific layouts for whatever you happen to be working on. So for example, you have modeling, sculpting, visualize, animation, many more, which you can see on this drop-down menu here. So for example, if I select sculpting, then I get a different layout that focuses on that. It's a few years old now, but 5 or 6 years ago, for example, this layout didn't exist. It's actually quite similar to ZBrush. It allows us to sculpt the model. So instead of following the traditional method, you can sculpt instead. And as you see, it's changed the program's interface quite a bit. But if you go back here and select standard or startup, it's the same, then the interface goes back to how it was before. If we select animation, then see how the layout changes specifically for animation. But to keep things simple, then we'll start with standard. Or like I said, startup, which is actually the same. Okay, so here we have some more options. Don't pay too much attention to this one, but this one is quite important. The content browser. It's sort of a library of things that are already installed in the program. So like presets. It depends on which type of cinema you have installed. So as you know, there are different types. You can achieve a lot with the basic one. But then you have Cinema Studio or Cinema Prime, which are for more specific things. For instance, this one here, which is Cinema Visualize. So imagine you're someone who works with motion graphics. Well, with Visualize, your cinema will be more focused on that particular area. And this just means that there'll be elements like presets and 3D objects that are made for that purpose. So if we go in here and take a look at some of these, this one here is for 3D people. So you have some pre-made elements. Imagine you're an architect and you have to do a model of the building. Well, here you have a library of ready-made objects that you could use for that purpose. So this is an extra, obviously, but I just wanted you to know that it's there. For example, in here you also have lots of different types of materials. It's all here in the Content Browser tab. But remember, it does depend on the type of cinema that you have installed and what version that is. Okay, so as an introduction to the interface, I don't think I've left anything out. It's just a brief overview, so 20 minutes is what we've spent on it, and I just wanted to explain the basics in this time. As you go along and you keep learning, and also you do the exercises that I've prepared for this course, you'll see each of these elements that I've explained in more depth. The most important thing really is the viewport, which is where we see the objects. Remember that here is where we can see the object in different views. This here is to move the camera. So with this one, I can move it like this. I can go closer and I can rotate with this one. You can also do this by holding down Alt and zoom in. And you can zoom out with the scroll wheel on your mouse. So important to remember the layout of the viewport and the different views. This area here too, where all the objects we create appear. This panel here, which you'll use a lot, as this panel shows us the specific properties of each element we created. Remember the panel here for the materials. We've got the timeline, which we won't really be using. This here on the side, we had make object editable. We could select the points, the edges, the polygons, and these options up here, which we'll use quite a lot too. So now you could take a look yourself at all the options I just explained to get used to where they are and what they do. And in the next lesson, we'll continue exploring the program. We're going to create our first model, where we'll learn about the primitive shapes, how to move them, rotate them, how to model with them, and we'll see a little bit of the camera too. So we're getting deeper now into the program, and I hope you enjoy it. I'll see you for the next lesson.